During a barbecue, my granddaughter said, "She only shows up to eat, she doesn't even know anyone's name." When I showed her our family photo album, she cried for an hour. "Your presence here means so much to me. Watch until the end and leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story has reached." During a family barbecue, my granddaughter said, "She only shows up to eat, doesn't even know anyone's name." When I showed her our family photo album, she cried for an hour. I didn't react when I first heard it. I stood frozen behind the sliding glass door, paper plates clutched in my trembling hands. My own granddaughter, Emily, just 16, sitting there among her cousins, completely unaware I was behind her. The words stung more than any physical pain I'd felt in my 70 years. Grandma Pamela, my daughter-in-law, Diana, asked with forced cheerfulness when she noticed me. "We need those plates outside." I nodded and walked through the door, setting the plates on the picnic table. Emily glanced up, her cheeks flushing when she realized I might have hurt her. But she didn't apologize. She just looked away, continuing her conversation as if I were truly invisible. I busied myself arranging the condiments, my mind racing back to a time when this house buzzed with love and warmth. Before Robert, my husband of 42 years, passed away 3 years ago. Before my son Michael and Diana gradually pushed me to the sidelines of family gatherings. Before I became the grandmother who only shows up to eat. "Mom, why don't you sit down?" Michael suggested, gesturing to a chair at the far end of the table. "Diana's got everything under control." Diana gave me a tight smile. "Yes, Pamela. Just relax. Just relax." As if I were some kind of burden. As if I hadn't spent decades hosting family gatherings in this very backyard, cooking for 20 people without breaking a sweat. Now I couldn't even help set the table without being shuffled away. I obediently sat in my assigned chair while Diana orchestrated the meal with rehearsed efficiency. She'd redone the entire house after Robert died, erasing most traces of the home we'd built together. Modern furniture replaced our comfortable old pieces. Family photos disappeared from walls, replaced by abstract prints that tied the room together, as she explained. "Grandma, would you like a burger?" my younger grandson, Tanner, asked. At 12, he still sought me out, though less frequently now. "Thank you, sweetheart." As I ate, I watched my family, my son engrossed in conversation with Diana's brother about investments, my grandchildren immersed in their phones between bites, Diana floating between guests, the perfect hostess in a home that used to be mine. When had I become so peripheral? After Robert died, Michael suggested I move into the guest house for company. It seemed reasonable then, the main house was too big for just me. But gradually, "Would you mind if we host Christmas this year?" became all holidays moving to their domain. "Mom, we've got the dinner tonight," became them handling all family gatherings. My suggestions were met with, "That's not how we do things anymore, Mom," or "Diana has it all planned." After dinner, as everyone scattered to the living room, I slipped away to the guest house. My hands shook as I made tea, Emily's words echoing in my mind. Was that how they all saw me now? Just an old woman who showed up for meals? In my small living room, I looked at the few photographs I'd managed to keep, Robert and me on our wedding day, Michael as a toddler, our family vacation at Yellowstone when Michael was 10. So many memories, most now boxed away in my storage closet. That's when I remembered the albums. Robert had meticulously documented our family history, creating beautiful photo albums for each year. Where had those gone during the reorganization of the house? I found them the next morning, dusty and forgotten in a storage box in the garage. 5 thick albums chronicling our family from Michael's birth through his college graduation. Pictures of the grandchildren's early years. Holidays. Vacations. Our life. That afternoon, when Emily stopped by to borrow something from the main house, I called her over. "Would you like some lemonade?" I asked. She hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "I guess." For a minute. As we sat on my small porch, I opened the first album. I thought you might like to see who all those people in the family are, I said quietly. Since you think I don't know their names. She had the grace to blush. Emily sat beside me, uncomfortable at first. She kept glancing at her phone, clearly hoping for a rescue text. That's your dad when he was 5, I said, pointing to a photo of Michael sitting on a pony, his face a mixture of terror and delight. He was afraid of animals back then. Ironic, considering he insisted on getting Tanner that Labrador puppy last Christmas. Emily leaned in slightly, her interest piqued despite herself. Dad was afraid of animals? Terrified. But your grandfather thought it important he face his fears. I smiled at the memory. Robert, your grandfather, was like that. Gentle but firm. I turned the page to a Christmas photo, Michael opening a gift, his face lit with joy. That's the microscope your dad wanted so badly. He was determined to become a scientist back then. Dad? A scientist? Emily looked genuinely surprised. But he's always been in finance. That came later. In college, he switched from biology to business after he met your mother. I kept my tone neutral, though I'd never forgotten my disappointment when Michael abandoned his passion for science to pursue what Diana had called a real career. Page after page, I showed Emily the history she'd never known. The family trips to the Smoky Mountains. The summer Michael broke his arm climbing the oak tree that used to stand in the backyard, the one Diana had removed because it disrupted the landscape design. Slowly, Emily's posture changed. She stopped checking her phone. She asked questions. And when we reached the album with her own baby pictures, her fingers traced the handwritten notes beside each photo. You wrote all these? She asked, pointing to the careful documentation of her first words, first steps, first everything. Of course. I kept these records for all my grandchildren. But... She hesitated. Mom said you weren't really involved when we were little. That you were too busy with your volunteer work. My heart froze. I watched you 3 days a week until you started kindergarten, Emily. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday while your mom worked on her interior design business. Emily's brow furrowed. That's not what she told us. What else did she tell you? I asked quietly. Emily hesitated, then the words tumbled out. She said you didn't approve of her and Dad's marriage. That you always criticized her parenting. That after Grandpa died, you became difficult and forgetful, and that's why they needed to take over the house and finances. Each word was a knife. I had suspected Diana had been driving the wedge between me and my grandchildren, but hearing the specific lies made my blood run cold. I see, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. And do I seem forgetful to you now? Emily looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. No, she admitted. You remember details about these photos from decades ago that I don't think Mom would know. I turned to a photo of Diana and Michael's wedding. I had spent weeks helping plan that day, wanting everything to be perfect for my only son. Diana looked radiant. Michael, besotted. I have never had anything but hope for your parents' marriage, I said softly. Even when I disagreed with some choices, I respected their decisions. But Emily, after your grandfather died, things changed. Not because I became difficult, but because I became inconvenient. Emily's eyes widened. Inconvenient? Your father received a substantial inheritance and life insurance payment after your grandfather passed, I explained carefully. Money that, in the beginning, Diana seemed quite eager to help manage. I showed her another photo, the whole family in front of the lake house we'd purchased when Michael was a teenager. Robert and I had worked extra jobs for years to afford that modest cabin. It was supposed to stay in the family for generations. Did you know they sold the lake house last year? I asked. Emily's head jerked up. What? But we were just talking about going there this summer. It was sold in February. I only found out when the new owners contacted me about some mail that had been delivered there. Tears filled Emily's eyes as she continued to turn pages, seeing birthdays, graduations, holidays, a lifetime of love and memories that contradicted the narrative she'd been fed. Her hand trembled as she touched a photo of herself at age 4, sitting on my lap while I read to her. "I remember this," she whispered. "You used to do the voices for all the characters." The first tear fell, then another, until she was sobbing against my shoulder. I held her, my own eyes wet. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked between sobs. "Why did you let them push you aside?" What could I say? They're your parents. Challenging them would only have created a deeper divide, perhaps cut me off completely from you children. I couldn't bear that. Emily wiped her eyes, a new determination settling on her young face. "This isn't right." We sat there for over an hour, the album sprawled across our laps, Emily crying as she recognized the gulf between what she'd been told and the evidence before her eyes. When Diana finally came looking for her, Emily quickly wiped her eyes. "What's going on here?" Diana asked, her gaze suspicious as she noted the albums. "Just showing Emily some family history," I replied calmly. "We need to go, Emily. Your father's waiting in the car." Diana's voice was tight, her smile forced. Emily stood, but before leaving, she leaned down and hugged me fiercely. "I'll come back tomorrow," she whispered. "There's more I need to know." As they walked away, Diana's arm around Emily's shoulders, I saw my granddaughter glance back at me with new eyes that had begun to see the truth. I carefully returned the albums to the table and made myself a cup of tea. For the first time in 3 years, a small flame of hope flickered in my chest. Maybe it wasn't too late to reclaim my place in my family. Maybe, just maybe, these dusty albums would be the key to unlocking the truth. Little did I know that Diana had been monitoring my bank accounts, or that Emily's questions would set in motion a confrontation that would change everything. Chapter 3: Revealed Truths. The next morning, I was arranging flowers in my small kitchen when a sharp knock startled me. I opened the door to find Michael standing there, his expression tight. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Diana's upset about yesterday." "Good morning to you too, Michael," I replied, returning to my flowers. "Would you like some coffee?" He paced the small living room. "What exactly did you tell Emily?" "She's been asking all sorts of questions about the lake house and Dad's inheritance." I measured my words carefully. I simply showed her some family photos. "If that prompted questions, perhaps you should ask yourself why." Michael ran a hand through his graying hair, so like his father's. "Mom, we've been over this. The lake house was a financial drain. As for Dad's inheritance, Diana and I are investing it wisely for everyone's future." "Everyone's future?" I echoed. "Or yours and Diana's?" His face flushed. "That's not fair." "What's not fair, Michael, is being treated like an incompetent child in my own family." I set down my scissors. "I managed our household finances for 42 years. I helped put you through college. Yet somehow, after your father died, I suddenly became incapable of basic financial decisions? It's not like that. Then explain to me why I only receive a monthly allowance from accounts that should be in my name. Explain why Diana now has signing authority on those accounts." He looked away. "It's simpler this way." "Simpler for whom?" Before he could answer, the door opened again. Emily stood there, slightly breathless. "I knew you'd be here, Dad," she said. "I heard you and Mom arguing about Grandma this morning." Michael's shoulders tensed. "Emily, this doesn't concern you." "Doesn't it?" She stepped inside, clutching her phone. "I've been doing some research. The lake house sold for $310,000. Where did that money go?" Michael stared at his daughter. "How do you?" "Public records, Dad. It's all online." Emily's voice shook slightly, but her gaze remained steady. "And Grandma's name wasn't on the sale documents, even though Grandpa's will left the property to both of you." I felt a chill. I hadn't known that detail. Robert had always said the lake house would belong to both of us. Michael's face paled. Emily, these are complicated adult matters. Stop treating me like I'm stupid. Emily's voice rose. And stop treating Grandma like she's incompetent. She's sharper than half my teachers. I reached for Emily's hand, squeezing it gently. It's all right, sweetheart. It's not all right, she insisted. Dad, remember last month when you said we couldn't afford my summer program? The one that would help me get into pre-med? But then Mom spent $15,000 renovating your home office? Michael shifted uncomfortably. Diana thought I needed a better workspace. That was my college fund money, wasn't it? I asked quietly. The pieces suddenly fit together, the mysterious investments that Diana never specified, the reluctance to discuss finances. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. Not all of it. We've been setting some aside. In accounts you control, I finished. Michael, look at me. When he finally did, I saw something I hadn't expected: shame. Your father and I saved for 40 years to ensure you would have a solid foundation and that I would be comfortable in my old age. We lived modestly. We drove old cars. We skipped vacations. All so that we'd never be a burden. I gestured around the small guest house. I agreed to move in here because you said it made sense, not because I couldn't manage on my own. I trusted you, Michael. I trusted you to honor your father's wishes. Emily moved closer to me. Dad, remember when I was little and you taught me about integrity? You said it meant doing the right thing even when no one was watching. Michael flinched as his own words came back to him. Someone has been watching, Dad, Emily continued. Grandma has been watching you erase her from this family for 3 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael stood frozen, caught between the manipulations of his wife and the simple truth his daughter and mother presented. Finally, he spoke. I'll talk to Diana. His voice was hollow. We'll sort this out. Michael, I said softly, this isn't just about money. It's about respect. It's about family. He nodded, shoulders slumped. I know. After Dad died, everything got so complicated. Diana said you were struggling, that it was best if we handled things. And you believed her without ever asking me? The hurt in my voice was unmistakable. I'm sorry, Mom. He moved toward the door, then paused. Emily, are you coming? Emily glanced at me, then back at her father. I'm staying with Grandma for a while. We have more albums to go through. After Michael left, Emily turned to me. Are you okay? I nodded, though my hands trembled slightly. It's been a long time coming, this conversation. What do we do now? She asked. Now, I said, reaching for another photo album, we continue remembering. Because sometimes the past is the key to reclaiming the future. As we opened the album, my phone rang. It was Diana, and her voice was ice cold. Pamela, she said, I think it's time we had a serious talk about your living arrangements. We need to discuss your future, Pamela, Diana said as she swept into my living room later that afternoon. She wore her real estate agent smile, bright but cold. Michael and I have been thinking it might be time for you to consider a retirement community. I sat calmly at my small dining table, Emily beside me. The photo albums were still open between us. Have you? I replied. How thoughtful of you to make such decisions about my life. Diana's eyes flickered to Emily. I didn't realize you'd be here, sweetheart. Don't you have volleyball practice? I skipped it, Emily said. This seemed more important. Diana's smile tightened. Family matters can be complicated, Emily. Perhaps you should let your grandmother and me talk privately. I'd like Emily to stay, I said firmly. After all, my future affects her too. Diana sat down across from us, smoothing her immaculate slacks. Well then. As I was saying, Michael and I have found a lovely community just 20 minutes from here. They have daily activities, nurses on staff, everything you could need. How convenient, I said. And what happens to this guest house once I'm gone? Diana waved dismissively. We'd probably convert it to a home office or gym. But that's not the point, Pamela. We're concerned about you living alone. I've been managing quite well for 3 years. Have you? Diana leaned forward. Michael mentioned you were upset about financial matters. That's exactly the sort of stress you don't need at your age. My age, I repeated. I'm 70, Diana, not 90. My mind is perfectly sharp, as is my memory. I tapped the photo album. For instance, I remember exactly how much Robert and I paid for the lake house in 1985. I remember the terms of our will, which left it to both Michael and me, not to be sold without my consent. Diana's smile disappeared. That property was a financial burden. We made a practical decision. Without consulting me. Without including me on the sale documents, though my name was on the deed. She shifted in her seat. Michael handled the paperwork. It must have been an oversight. Like the oversight of transferring my accounts to your control? Or the oversight of telling my grandchildren I was uninvolved in their early years? Diana's eyes hardened. I don't know what Emily's been telling you. I've been telling her the truth, Emily interrupted. The truth you and Dad have been hiding. Diana stood abruptly. That's enough, Emily. Get your things. We're leaving. No, Emily said, her young voice steady. I'm staying with Grandma tonight. Diana's face flushed with anger. You most certainly are not. You're 16 years old, and as long as you live under our roof. Then maybe I don't want to live under your roof anymore. Emily shouted. Not if it means watching you push aside the only grandparent I have left. The door opened, and Michael stepped in, his face grim. I could hear you from the driveway. Diana turned to him. Thank goodness. Michael, explain to your daughter that she needs to come home right now. Michael looked at the three of us, his wife standing rigidly, his daughter defiant, and me, quietly observing. Then his eyes fell on the photo albums. What are those? He asked, moving closer. Family albums, I replied. The ones your father kept. The ones that were boxed up and stored in the garage after he died. Michael picked up one, his expression softening as he flipped through pages of his childhood. I remember these. Michael, Diana said sharply. We were discussing the retirement community, remember? He closed the album, looking troubled. Diana, I've been thinking about that. I'm not sure it's what Mom wants. It's what's best for her. Is it? He gestured around the small guest house. She's been fine here. She's not confused or incapable. Diana's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. We discussed this, Michael. The money. I know what we discussed. Michael's voice was tired. But after talking with Mom and Emily this morning, I've realized we've been making decisions we had no right to make. Diana stared at him. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying, Michael said slowly, that I want to see the financial statements. All of them. The lake house sale, Mom's accounts, everything. The color drained from Diana's face. You don't trust me? It's not about trust. It's about transparency. Mom deserves to know where her money is going. I watched this exchange with a mixture of relief and sadness. My son was finally standing up to Diana, but at what cost to his marriage? I think, I said carefully, that we all need time to calm down. Diana, I appreciate your concern, but I won't be moving to any retirement community. Michael, I would indeed like to review the financial statements. And Emily, I squeezed her hand, while I've loved having you here, your parents are right about one thing, your home is with them. Emily started to protest, but I continued. However, I would like weekly visits. Real ones, not just appearances at family barbecues. Michael nodded. That sounds reasonable. Diana's eyes darted between us. This isn't over, Pamela. Clearly you've been filling Emily's head with. Mom, Michael cut in, his voice sharper than I'd heard in years. That's enough. Diana grabbed her purse. Fine. We'll discuss this at home. She stormed out, leaving an awkward silence behind her. Michael sighed. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have seen this sooner. You're seeing it now, I said gently. That's what matters. After they left, I sat alone in my quiet house. The confrontation had been painful but necessary. Seeds of change had been planted, but Diana wouldn't give up easily. She had too much to lose: control, money, her carefully constructed narrative. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Dad's looking through the financial records. Mom's furious. I'll call you tomorrow. Love you, Grandma. I smiled at those 3 words, love you, Grandma, and knew that whatever came next, I had already won back something precious. The next day would bring more revelations, more painful truths. But for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't facing them alone. 2 weeks passed in a storm of tension and revelations. Michael immersed himself in financial records, uncovering the extent of Diana's deception. The lake house money, most of it, had been transferred to accounts only she could access. My monthly allowance was a pittance compared to what my actual investments should have yielded. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Michael arrived at my doorstep, his face lined with exhaustion and regret. Coffee? I offered, ushering him inside. He nodded gratefully, sinking into my armchair. Mom, I don't even know where to begin. I poured 2 cups and sat across from him. The beginning is usually a good place. After Dad died, he said, staring into his cup, I was lost. Diana stepped in, said she'd handle the practical matters so I could grieve. It seemed reasonable at the time. And then? He sighed. It happened so gradually. She suggested consolidating accounts for simplicity. She mentioned you seemed overwhelmed by decisions. Small comments, subtle suggestions. Before I knew it, she was handling everything. And you never questioned it? I convinced myself it was for the best. His voice cracked. She's my wife, Mom. I wanted to believe she had everyone's best interests at heart. I reached across and squeezed his hand. We often believe what's easiest to accept. I've been a fool, he whispered. And worse, I've been a terrible son. I shook my head. You're here now. That's what matters. He took a deep breath. I've consulted a lawyer. We can restore your accounts, challenge the lake house sale. There will be consequences, but... What consequences, Michael? I asked, already knowing the answer. His eyes met mine. My marriage may not survive this. I set down my cup. Is that what you want? I don't know anymore. His voice was hollow. Diana refuses to acknowledge what she's done. She keeps insisting she was protecting the family, protecting you from yourself. When I confronted her with the evidence, He trailed off. She what? She accused me of betraying her for you. He laughed bitterly. As if making things right was somehow a betrayal. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the windows. We sat in silence for a moment, 2 people navigating the wreckage of broken trust. Emily's been amazing through all this, Michael said eventually. She's hardly speaking to her mother, but she's been helping me sort through all the documentation. I smiled. She has her grandfather's integrity. And her grandmother's strength, he added. Just then, my doorbell rang. Michael tensed. That'll be Emily. I asked her to meet us here. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Emily who stood in the rain. It was Diana. Her usually perfect hair was damp, her makeup smudged. She looked smaller somehow, deflated. May I come in? She asked, her voice lacking its usual edge. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Diana entered, stopping short when she saw Michael. So this is where you've been hiding, she said. Michael stood. I told you I was coming to see Mom today. Diana glanced around the small guest house, her gaze lingering on the photo albums that now lived permanently on my coffee table. I suppose we should all talk. About what, Diana? I asked, closing the door. About the money you've mismanaged? Or about the lies you've told my grandchildren? She flinched. I didn't come here for accusations. Why did you come, then? Michael asked. Diana sat carefully on the edge of the sofa. Emily won't speak to me. Tanner is asking questions I can't answer. Our family is falling apart. A family you've been systematically removing me from for 3 years, I observed. She looked away. I did what I thought was necessary. Necessary? Michael's voice rose. Was it necessary to steal Mom's money? To sell the lake house without her knowledge? To poison our children against their grandmother? Diana's composure cracked. You were so broken after your father died. Someone had to take control, make decisions. Your mother was barely functioning. I was grieving, I interrupted calmly. There's a difference. Everything I did, Diana insisted, was to protect our future. Your investments were too conservative. The lake house was draining our resources. Our resources? Michael echoed. None of it was ours, Diana. It was Mom's. Diana's eyes filled with tears, whether genuine or tactical, I couldn't tell. I made mistakes. I can admit that. But I never meant to hurt anyone. A silence fell, broken only by the sound of rain against the windows. What do you want, Diana? I finally asked. She looked up, meeting my gaze directly for perhaps the first time. I want a chance to make things right. To be a family again. Michael shook his head. It's not that simple. Trust has been broken. But it can be rebuilt, she insisted, then turned to me. Pamela, I'm asking for your forgiveness. I studied her face, searching for sincerity behind the well-practiced expression of contrition. Was this a genuine moment of reckoning, or just another manipulation? Before I could answer, the door opened and Emily stepped in, rain dripping from her jacket. She froze when she saw Diana. What's she doing here? Emily demanded. Diana stood, reaching toward her daughter. Emily, please. Emily stepped back. Grandma, are you okay? Is she bothering you? The protectiveness in her voice warmed my heart. I'm fine, sweetheart. Your mother came to talk. Emily's eyes narrowed. About what? More lies? Emily. Diana's voice sharpened with hurt. We're discussing how to move forward, Michael explained. As a family. Emily crossed her arms. Does that include returning Grandma's money? And letting her back into our lives, for real, not just as someone who shows up to eat? Diana winced at hearing her own words repeated. I want to make amends. Words are easy, Emily retorted. I moved to stand beside my granddaughter. They are. But sometimes they're a start. The four of us stood there, rain pattering against the roof, as the first tenuous threads of possibility stretched between us. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of a path toward it. What happens now? Diana asked quietly. I looked around at my fractured family and made a decision. Now, we begin again. 1 year later, I stood in my kitchen arranging a platter of Robert's favorite oatmeal cookies. The house, my house, smelled of cinnamon and coffee. Not the guest house, but the main house, where I'd lived with Robert for almost 4 decades. I'd moved back in 3 months ago, after extensive family therapy and financial restructuring. The doorbell rang, and I smiled at the sound of Emily's voice calling, "It's us, Grandma." I opened the door to find my granddaughter, now 17, with an armful of sunflowers, my favorites. Behind her, Tanner carried a gift bag, grinning proudly. First one's here, Emily announced, hugging me tightly. As usual, I laughed, accepting the flowers. Your punctuality would have made your grandfather proud. We wanted to help set up, Tanner explained, placing his package on the hall table. We moved to the kitchen together, falling into an easy rhythm as we prepared for the family gathering. So much had changed in a year. After Diana's tearful visit to the guest house, the real work had begun, painful, necessary work. Michael had insisted on full financial transparency. With the help of lawyers, we'd untangled the mess Diana had created. Most of my assets had been recovered, though the lake house was gone for good. Diana had suggested selling their vacation condo to replace it, but I declined. Some losses couldn't be undone with money. Did you finish your college applications? I asked Emily as she arranged the sunflowers in a vase. She nodded excitedly. All done. Pre-med at Northwestern is still my first choice. Your grandfather would be bursting with pride, I said. He always said you had a healer's heart. I wish I'd known him better, Emily said softly. You know him through the stories, I replied, gesturing to the photo albums now displayed prominently in the living room bookcase. And through the parts of him that live in you. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Michael, carrying several grocery bags. Mom, we brought everything for the salad. Diana's just parking the car. Our eyes met in silent understanding. These Sunday family dinners weren't always easy, especially for Diana. Her relationship with Michael remained strained, though they were trying, for the children's sake, for the family's. A moment later, Diana entered, impeccably dressed as always but without the armor of superiority she'd once worn so proudly. Pamela, she greeted me with a quick, uncertain hug. The house looks lovely. Thank you for the flowers you sent yesterday, I replied. They brightened up the whole morning. Diana nodded, clearly relieved by the warm reception. These small exchanges still carried weight, each of us finding our footing in this new reality. Can I help with anything? She asked, already rolling up her sleeves. I handed her a knife and cutting board. The tomatoes need slicing. As we worked together in the kitchen, Diana chopping vegetables, Michael setting the table, the grandchildren arranging desserts, I felt Robert's presence almost tangibly. He would have loved this hard-won piece. I found something I thought you might want to see, I said to Diana when we had a moment alone. I retrieved a small box from the pantry. These are some early photos of Michael that didn't make it into the albums. Diana opened the box cautiously, then gasped softly. He was such a beautiful baby. He was, I agreed. Stubborn from day one, but so full of joy. She looked up, her eyes glistening. Pamela, I don't know if I've properly apologized for. I raised a hand. You have. Many times. And while I can't say I've forgotten, I am trying to forgive. For all our sakes. Diana nodded, carefully returning the photos to their box. I never understood what I was destroying until it was almost gone. The history, the connections. Almost gone, I emphasized. But not completely. Later, as we gathered around the dining table, expanded now to accommodate our growing family, including Emily's boyfriend and Tanner's best friend, I looked at each face and marveled at the journey we'd taken. Before we eat, Michael said, raising his glass, I'd like to propose a toast. To Mom, for bringing us back together. For teaching us the value of family beyond just words. To Grandma, Emily echoed, her young face solemn. I felt tears prick my eyes. I think I should be toasting all of you. A year ago, I never would have imagined we'd be sitting here like this. Like what? Tanner asked. Like a real family, I said simply. Imperfect, still healing, but together. After dinner, as everyone moved to the living room for coffee and dessert, Diana approached me with a thick envelope. I'd been working on this for a while, she said, her voice unusually hesitant. It's a deed to a small cabin on Lake Michigan. It's not the same as the old lake house, but I thought, maybe we could create new memories there. I accepted the envelope, touched by the gesture, though careful not to overstate my gratitude. Trust was still a tender seedling between us. Thank you, I said simply. That's very thoughtful. Diana smiled tentatively. It's in your name only. I want you to know that. As the evening wound down, Emily pulled me aside. Grandma, I need to show you something. She led me to the hallway where dozens of family photos now hung, not just old ones from the albums, but new ones from the past year. In the center hung a freshly framed photograph I hadn't seen before, me at the barbecue last summer, surrounded by grandchildren, laughing at something Michael had said. I took this the day after we went through the albums, Emily explained. I wanted to remember the moment things started to change. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. It's perfect. You know, she said, leaning against me, I think about that comment I made sometimes. About you just showing up to eat, not knowing anyone. I was so wrong. You didn't know any better, I said gently. You only knew what you'd been told. Still, she insisted, I'm sorry. I kissed her forehead. The beautiful thing about family, real family, is that we get to learn and grow together. We make mistakes, we hurt each other sometimes, but we also heal together. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the house was quiet again, I sat in Robert's old armchair, surrounded by the echoes of laughter and conversation that had filled the rooms hours before. We did it, Robert, I whispered into the stillness. It wasn't easy, and it's still not perfect, but we found our way back to being a family. On the table beside me sat the albums, weathered, loved, and now regularly browsed by grandchildren eager to know their history. Next to them lay a new, empty album with a note from Emily, for all our future memories. At 71, I was no longer the forgotten grandmother who just showed up to eat. I was Pamela, matriarch of a wounded but healing family, keeper of stories both painful and precious. And in that moment, surrounded by the quiet evidence of renewed connections, I felt truly seen for the first time in years.